It's Divas That Care Radio. Stories, strategies, and ideas to inspire positive change. Welcome to Divas That Care, a network of women committed to making our world a better place for everyone. This is a global movement for women, by women, engaged in a collaborative effort to create a better world for future generations. To find out more about the movement, visit divasthatcare.com after the show. Right now, though, stay tuned for another jolt of inspiration.
Namaste and welcome to the Divas That Care Network. I'm your host, Gia-Raquel Rose, owner of Airs Above Yoga, and you are listening to Above the Ground podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, our network is in its 14th year and listened to in over 30 countries. I'd like to personally thank you for giving me the gift of your time. It's my honor to hold space with you. And in keeping with all of the talk that we've had over the holiday season and moving into the new year about heart opening meditations for tapping into your heart center, I thought no better time than the present to get into a little bit about heart health and a little bit of not only Ayurveda, but also mainly nutrition for heart health, which, a lot of people I know are definitely familiar with things that are heart healthy. And there's also the most important aspect is your body and making sure that what may be heart healthy for the multitudes may or may not conflict with what might work for you. So as if you've been listening at all, we've had a lot of dietary conversations. I had a wonderful friend of mine come on and talk about a whole food plant-based diet. As I've shared before, I've gone on a paleo diet, which is kind of a direct conflict to that, but not quite as much as you might think, other than the incorporation of animal protein, which you may have some feelings about one way or the other. But also when it comes to your heart, animal protein is obviously kind of one of those top concerns, and choosing the correct proteins to support the heart as opposed to those that might cause a problem. For example, red meat and eggs versus something like salmon and fish and healthy omegas. So things to keep in mind about what works for your body. Obviously, always talk to your doctor, come up with a plan of attack that you think is going to support your heart. But it's not always about just what we put into our body. It is also about what we choose to allow our minds to focus on. It's about how we take care of ourselves physically. So, we talk a lot, and I talk a lot about our chakra systems and how I always say that the heart chakra is kind of my favorite of all the chakras. Not that I should play favorites, but it's definitely, I call it the bridge, and I'm not the only one that does so, because it is this, out of 7, it is the one that connects the upper and lower. And I do believe that the heart plays a very pivotal role, not only in our physical well-being, we would die if it stopped, obviously, but it also energetically, metaphysically, however you want to phrase it, your heart center, your body generally knows before your brain. A lot of times you tend to get into overthinking mentalities, and your brain takes over, and then you wind up taking actions that may not be in your highest or best good, or you will have, some sort of response from your body, from your heart, while you are out and about somewhere that may prevent you from encountering danger because it gave you an alert. So paying attention to your body, to your heart. And that's one of the reasons why I prefaced with a meditation to get into your heart space, is to start to cultivate that relationship with that center, knowing that you can trust it to guide you, always following your heart. And even when logic and reason may tell you otherwise, it's there for you to keep you on what is true for you. More than likely, 9 times out of 10, maybe even 10 times out of 10, your heart will not lead you astray. And so making sure that you absolutely listen to it, trust it, develop a relationship with being able to tune in and tap into it. That is one of the most important things. And obviously, the relationship that you cultivate with your heart is, the relationship with yourself, and taking care of yourself and self-care, and ensuring that you treat your heart the way you would treat someone that you love so much and protect, whether it's a child, whether it's a fur baby, whatever it might be. So starting to turn that focus of concern, care, and consideration inwards, as opposed to always directing it outwards. And so when it comes to things you can do to protect your heart, or to, definitely take care of your heart, even if it may not need protection, I don't want any negative connotations. Um, Obviously rest and exercise. Those are two of the main things that everybody needs. And frankly, probably most people need more of them than they're getting, either way. And again, for you, do what you can. For example, if you can't do much else, walk. If you can't walk, maybe practice some chair yoga. Um, but movement is one of the most important things for your body and for your heart. It gives your heart a break. And as this kind of series, I will say, started with Shavasana and legs up the wall. Legs up the wall is a wonderful way to give your heart a rest by allowing the blood flow from your legs to move up, well, in this instance, anti-gravity down towards your heart, as opposed to up to your heart, which is what it has to do, all day, every day when you're not laying down. So keeping in mind, again, that everything that you choose to do, the content that you choose to consume, one of the main stressors in life and one of the main killers actually for women is heart disease. And, if you turn on the news at any point in time, regardless, and I will not get political, or, there are horrors going on all over the world. I'm not telling anyone to ostracize themselves from reality, but what I am saying is you have control over the content that you consume. And if it's stressing you out, turn it off. There are passive and active ways to consume information, and we are on a whole, as a country, as a nation, as a people living in an information age, we are bombarded by information. You can find it, you can search for it, you can take it in quiet, calm, measured manners. And so, as opposed to if you put on the news, you put on, any sort of 24-hour news channel, it is a true assault on the senses. And it is a necessary assault, and we are all grateful to have that kind of information right at our fingertips anytime we want it. I'm not saying that it's not something to be grateful for, that it is instant, and for our own health and well-being, that is a positive to be able to find out whatever it is that we need to know at the touch of a button. But also, maybe look for yourself. Maybe instead of allowing it to come to you, maybe you seek it out. Maybe you quiet it down, go online, read about what's going on. Don't allow it to kind of come at your face and create all of these emotions by tapping into all of these extra senses, where you can actually flip the script. If you want to know what's going on, simply pick up your phone, look at your computer. I mean, God save us, pick up a newspaper if they even exist anymore, and seek out the information as opposed to being a victim of that information. All ways to stay informed and keep up to date and still kind of protect your heart. But whenever you start to feel emotional, and I don't want to say that emotions are negative, they're not, but if something that you're consuming, some form of content that you're consuming, starts to hit you in your heart space, either allow it to inspire action. Like, for example, if, like me, everyone knows the Sarah McLachlan animal commercial that would play around the holidays generally, and it's all the sad puppy dog eyes in, horrible situations. That will pull on my heartstrings, and it will inspire me to donate to help those puppies, or um, you know, always those things that pull on those heartstrings. Hopefully they inspire action. That's why they're geared to do that. But when it comes to other things, even insofar as like horror movies, for example, the point is this assault on your senses to create this feeling in the body, and they do it so well. And a lot of times they're not even showing you anything. It's just getting you right in your feels, for lack of a better term. And so all I want you to start to do is to please pay attention to your feels, and to your heart space, and to, as the day, there's a lot of stresses that we can't control. There are a lot of occurrences. There are a lot of people there. As you move through your day, life, for the most part, is out of your control. But a lot of times you can take a step back. You can pause. You can walk away. You can, even if you have to, run to to the restroom, and just take a moment and take a breath and recenter yourself, because all of that stress adds up. And as I've said, as a yoga instructor for years, and if you're not processing it mentally and emotionally, it will stick in your body somewhere, whether it's your chest, whether it's your shoulders. A lot of people, a lot of women, it's all like neck, shoulder tension. But you need to start to pay attention to your body's physical cues. And one of the reasons I bring up horror movies is I think everyone can relate to that. It is such a visceral reaction that you have, and television in general, that sort of content coming in and coming at you. These are, again, it's not a negative thing. It's not a bad thing. It is meant to inspire emotion. That is the point. That is the sad puppy-eyed dog commercial. That is the point, is to create these emotions, and they do a wonderful job, and it's art. It truly is art. But we're talking about your health. And so we're talking about consuming in a conscientious way, paying attention and not being a victim of your own choices, but rather starting to pay attention to when your heart says, okay, that's enough of the news. I'm done with that now. Or, you know what? I don't need to have someone telling me what's going on. I can actively seek it out and seek out the things that I know are relevant to me, that I want to know, that I want to focus and pay attention to. I'm sure lots of you are already doing that, but I just think it's a very good and very tangible, very accessible example of what and how we can, in a normal everyday situation, very benign situation, putting the news on, and a lot of people do that when they have breakfast or in the morning when they're drinking their coffee. Do whatever you want to do for yourself that you feel contributes to your highest and best good, but do so with some care, and do so with mindfulness. And so you have the ability to tap in and say, okay, I'm done with this content now, or okay, I'm done with this conversation now, or okay. As soon as you start to feel that, for me, I get like a tension, almost like a little cramp in my heart center when I'm done with whatever it might be. So with the meditation, the heart space meditation, and with just the idea of becoming more of an active participant in your consumption, things to reduce the stress, because all of the walking in the world is not going to combat excessive daily overwhelm, stress. And so that is one of the most important things that we can do. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, and you can laugh at me, please feel free to have a chuckle. I always butcher the name, always. And this will kind of lead me into my whole conversation about dietary restrictions and what works for you. And just because it's good for your heart, it may not be good for your personal heart health. And I'm going to butcher it, Ashwananda. I'm sure everyone's familiar with it. It is a stress reducing, it's a plant essentially, but it's in tea. People basically I think, have an alignment with it as a supplement. But it's definitely a great one. I will also say that if you're paleo, it is not one of the better options to choose. Or if you have Hashimoto's or an autoimmune disease, as much as I still take it every once in a while, and it's in a lot of things, as a stress reducer. If you don't have any of these autoimmune issues, then have at it. And it's definitely one of not only Ayurvedic, but just in general, it's a great stress reducer. But it is counterintuitive for those that have autoimmune conditions. And I would get into the whole host of reasons why, but we don't have all the time in the world. So I just want to say that everything in moderation when it comes to supplements and things like that. But it's a great, for me, tie-in to talking about kind of the things that a lot of people know, but touching in on where, again, you have to listen to your own body. You have to drop into that own heart space, and start to ask yourself what physically helps your body and what may not help your body. So some of the main foods that are wonderful to support your heart health, and I think a lot of people are familiar with them, but obviously the big one, and usually safe for pretty much most diets, are leafy greens, right? Are vegetables. You can't, not knock on wood, unless you have some specific allergy, you kind of can't go wrong, especially with your spinach, and with cruciferous vegetables, when we're talking about heart health, your broccoli, your cauliflower, your Brussels sprouts, your kale, all of those are wonderful for your heart health. Now, again, a lot of times the foods that are heart healthy may have, counterintuitive issues that are not ideal for all. For example, legumes, beans are a great natural source of fiber. They're wonderful for your heart, but again, if you have an autoimmune condition, legumes can activate inflammation within the body, or at least they are one of the usual suspects that get blamed for that. So, beans may not be a part of your diet if you do have an autoimmune condition, but they are wonderful for heart health. Similarly to beans are whole grains. And, I have been vegetarian, and we heard my friend Jason go into specifically, grains and the processing of them being more of a component to the negative side effects that people can experience from grains versus the grains themselves being the evil. It's generally the processing. And when it comes to processed foods, I kind of couldn't agree more. The less processed, the better. The limited ingredients, the better for your body, obviously. But not all of us can have the time or the accessibility to be able to get truly high quality grains. Some of us are very blessed and live very close and can. But again, if you are on an autoimmune protocol diet, then some grains are worse than others. For example, something like a quinoa is going to be a lesser evil than, a white rice or a typical flour. But fiber in whatever form that you can get it is going to be good. So to that end, while it's not necessarily always on the list for heart health, things like, as I will say, suitable substitutions, sweet potatoes are one of my favorite things. Those very hearty root vegetables that can support with fiber, which is again, you're going to have to supplement if you are giving up or living a grain-free lifestyle. You do have to supplement, and I do find that those hearty fall vegetables, such as sweet potatoes, such as butternut squash or spaghetti squashes, those come into a really, really big player in the arena of substitution when it comes to dietary restrictions with regard to grains. So remember, where you remove something, you want to at least put something in so that you're not depriving your body. So I had tried keto, and I'm not going to say negative things, but that's a pretty drastic, putting your body physically into ketosis and forcing, a potentially unnatural state of being is something that, for people that truly need it for their own health. And here we go again. If you happen to have like diabetes, which is one of the reasons that keto actually was created, was to combat sugar levels, then obviously, yeah, then there's a reason for that. Similarly to being on a plant-based diet, or similarly to being on a paleo diet, everybody's different. And I said everybody, says in not everybody, but everybody is different. And so you truly have to work with someone who is a professional in this. And a lot of times testing is required. You need to understand what's going on within your body in an effort to be able to properly heal yourself with food, which I'm a huge believer in, food being medicine. If you are eating well and you are eating properly for your body, for yourself, you're cooking more of your meals, you're eating less out, or you're very cognizant of what you choose when you're not at home, when you haven't prepared it yourself, it's huge. It's life altering. And so really carving out the time to do that is paramount. It truly is. So, to that end, some of the next thing that I want to talk about with specificity to this line of thought for being good for your heart, but maybe not good for you, is one of, I'm going to call it slightly lesser known than some of the big names like keto and paleo, but there's a diet called low FODMAP diet. And this is where this plays hugely into heart health with regard to the big two, which are onions and garlic. So the proponents and health benefits of garlic are massive. If you have, and low FODMAP generally aligns itself with things like IBS, Crohn's, more of like gut and intestinal health issues or sensitivities, I should say. And so when it comes to that, onions and garlic are, one of, again, the usual suspects, like the main offenders that can really negate that kind of health in the system. And so while they are top on the list of things that are good for your heart, they're another one where, you're hoping that you can be able to find something else as opposed to that will also contribute to your heart health. So if you do not have any sort of irritation to garlic or onions or, shallots, things of that nature, then please eat them frequently because they are wonderful for your heart health. And again, going back to that kind of Ayurvedic principle at its very basic level of aligning the color of the food with the color of the chakra. And I know that people are going to think, what? But if you think red onion, right? Green onion, green for your heart, that kind of a thing. It can really be that simple. And then when we're talking about, garlic, there's garlic can be taken in supplement form. So unfortunately, if you do have those sensitivities, even in supplement form, it's still going to create problems. So these are just, again, I'm starting with the bad news first. So the garlic, the onions, some of the beans, some of the whole foods, the plants, forgive me, not the whole foods, but these plant-based foods like whole grains. These are some of the things that can be problematic. But then we have some crowd pleasers, and those crowd pleasers are your berries, for example. So, again, we think red, we think heart, even though the red is the root chakra color, a lot of times people associate red with the heart. So you want to think about your blueberries, your strawberries. Berries are wonderful, filled with antioxidants. They, again, are not typical. There are some fruits that will coincide, obviously, negatively with, I think, a low FODMAP diet, especially. But when it comes to, or a keto diet, for example, especially, paleo, you're pretty much allowed to eat most fruits, and whole food plant-based, you definitely are allowed to have fruit. So the berries are a big, big, big ticket item when it comes to heart health. So one of the top things that you can do for yourself is load up on berries. And I like to put them in smoothies. I like to obviously eat them when they're local and they're fresh and it's that season. But they are very, very big and very good for your heart. Additionally, going along those same lines, we have our vegetables that I talked about, our leafy greens. And a lot of times what I do want to mention is if there are sensitivities for cruciferous vegetables, for example, sometimes cooking them, even kind of for onions, but those are a little bit more aggressive. Sometimes cooking the vegetables will eliminate a decent amount of some of the negative effects for certain sensitivities that one may or may not encounter. And obviously, please, like I said, this is a really brief overview of just kind of getting people to start thinking about, the foods that they should incorporate in their diet on a daily, weekly, if not daily basis to kind of just feed their heart health, right? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about little things in like that we can consistently do. So if you go to the grocery store, maybe instead of picking up iceberg lettuce, you pick up baby spinach, right? Little tiny swaps, right? And maybe instead of picking up, whole flour, nuts are another wonderful option for your heart health. They have loads of healthy fats. Maybe you pick up almond flour instead of all-purpose flour. Little tiny swaps, things that you can do so that you're still enjoying things, you're still feeding yourself with nutritious foods, you're still taking care of your body, but you're doing it with just a little more mindfulness. So again, almonds, nuts, things like that, wonderful. Salmon, wonderful. If we're talking back to going on a paleo or incorporating meats into your diet, fish protein, cold water, generally speaking, specifically, is again, not to go against what my neighbor and friend said, but even he said that when he was on a Mediterranean diet, which again is considered a heart healthy diet, and I'll dive in a little more to that, is fish is a huge proponent. And even I, on a paleo diet, which again, it's very, very hard to get your protein sources if you're not eating legumes, if you're not eating dairy, if you're not having cheese or yogurt, those kinds of things. I do happen to think that seafood or cold water fish protein is one of the higher choices. I even have my dogs on salmon for their diet. So the omegas, the heart health, it's there if you're going to not follow a plant-based diet in the cold water fish. Additionally, lean lean protein, your chicken, your turkey, those types of things. Those are going to be a little more gentle. And I don't mean like cold cut. I mean, properly unprocessed. If you can get organic happy chickens, as I like to call them, or were happy up until they had one bad day, um, then that's kind of, I would say, preferable to a consistent amount of red meat. Although red meat has some benefits, iron, etc. Even eggs have some benefits. But when we're talking about cholesterol, we're talking about heart health. We do want to try to make those choices that aim a little bit more towards heart support proteins like salmon, like fish. So just keeping that kind of in the back of our minds as well. And, when we talk about these things, we're talking about tiny, small, daily things that we can do. I'm not saying a whole overhaul, right? But we're talking about making small, different choices that really may not impact us terribly much, but they're not going to make us cry or scream or, little things, micro choices, as opposed to big, going from a regular, eating pasta, eating burgers, eating buns, and going totally paleo is a challenge. And I transition by eliminating kind of one thing at a time to get myself there. But it is all about discipline, but it's not about what worked for me. It's about what can work for others. And that's why some of these little swaps can be so beneficial. And oils are another huge one. Again, maybe not for whole food plant-based, but for people that are coming off of, a typical American diet, maybe even a Mediterranean diet. These are things that you're still probably consuming, and that's okay. And I am too. And I even have done quite a bit of baking since I've gone paleo, because let's face it, you can't find a lot of paleo baked goods. They are few and far between. There are some, but they are few and far between. And so when you start to kind of dive into these things and you have to kind of make your own, find your own way, and there are lots of wonderful resources online. So by all means, feel free to deep dive into them as much as you'd like. But oils are huge. Spending a little bit extra in that department, I think, at the store when you choose olive oil, extra virgin olive oil is wonderful for your heart. Avocado oil, and again, cold press, like the good stuff. This is where you want to spend a little bit extra if you are in a blessed enough position to do so. That's where it's going to matter, is those high quality oils and fats, because you want to make sure that if you are consuming something that is a potential problem child for your heart, that you're giving those healthy fats and those oils in the best way. And that's where those nuts, those seeds, flaxseed is huge. It's wonderful for your heart. You can get a nice cold pressed flax oil. You can add it to your smoothies. So you can put flax seeds in your baked goods. I do that all the time. I have ground flax that I add into muffins or cookies, or I make muffins more than cookies with protein. But that type of thing. So just making these small little choices that will affect positively overall your kitchen. And in your kitchen, they will affect what you put into your body. And having them in the house is the first step to be able to implement them and use them. So thinking about, the health of your heart and thinking about making these little choices, outside of the moment, that will positively impact you for a duration. And what I love about the metaphor of oils when it comes to this is generally whatever oil you purchase is going to last you a little bit. It's not going to be, a bag of chips that you need to grab again the next time you go to the store. You're going to have that. And that's why I say I look at it a little bit as an investment. So you want to spend a little more and you want to buy those high quality oils. You want to buy those high quality nuts and seeds, that fresh produce. Like these are the places that you want to spend. And these are the things that you want to have readily available to you. And, I will say frozen's another, pretty good way to go if you are working with having fruits, vegetables, kind of more of those whole foods. If you can find, good organic frozen produce. I keep my berries in the freezer because I still like to have berries in my smoothie even in the off season. So just things to consider so that you're conscientiously making healthy choices that will support you over a long term. And I find that what you have in your house, generally speaking, is huge. When I did make the shift and I did switch to a diet that was, let's be honest, pretty limiting, pretty specific. It was when I overhauled my kitchen that it really started to come together for me because once I eliminated all the foods from my kitchen that I was eliminating from my diet, I created the space to replace them with the foods that I can now and do enjoy utilizing. So it's one of those constant work in progress things, but we just want to talk about ways that we can positively impact ourselves little bits at a time, consistently over time, so that you're investing as much in your olive oil as you're investing in yourself, right? You are making sure that the things that you bring home with you truly support you for the long term, and making sure that taking care of your heart and your body is becomes an imperative, important, if I've said it before, I'll say it again, paramount part of your life. It's so, so very important. And like I said, when you're getting into the Ayurveda of heart health, when we're talking about like spices and things, turmeric is another great one that is, a big player in Ayurveda, but also everyone's familiar with it. I know I've mentioned golden milk before, but it can be an acquired taste for someone that may not be a huge fan of turmeric. Um, but I happen to love it, and I will just mention again briefly kind of what I put into it. So generally, it's going to be like about a tablespoon of turmeric, and for people that are still consuming dairy products, a lot of times it will be made with cow's milk. I prefer to make it with coconut milk. And one of the things that the two most important things to know about turmeric or golden milk or golden latte in general is that they need fat and black pepper. Not a lot of black pepper, but turmeric is opened up and better absorbed by the body when there's just like a dash, like a little pinch of black pepper in there with it. I like to add honey. I like to add cinnamon. You can even add ginger if you like, if you have like a stomach issue and you want to add a little bit of extra care for your tummy. And then people will also add coconut oil to it. And if you're using full fat coconut milk, I think that's plenty. I don't think you need to overdo it, but adding an oil to it again can be positive because the fat helps kind of it tastes good when you actually drink the latte. It makes it that kind of thick, creamy consistency. But it also helps with the absorption of the nutrients. So when you're talking about um, positive things to do, that may be something to implement into your nighttime routine because it can be wonderful and warming to help get you in that kind of sleepy mood. So that takes me into the other of the big three: stress reduction, exercise, and sleep. So get your rest. That is one of the best things you can do. And I will say, I have in my day pulled all-nighters back when I was younger. And, whether I had a paper due, whether I had, hopefully not a big test, so that's not going to help anybody. But a lot of times people will sacrifice their sleep to get things done. It happens every day. And I've been guilty of that for sure. But I will say that I notice one of the most important things that I notice is the idea of when I've gotten like less than 6 hours sleep, like 5 hours sleep, maybe God forbid less than 5 hours sleep, I do feel it in my chest. I do feel that fatigue, that deep fatigue, like my body is working so much harder than it needs to just to be able to get through the normal things in my day that it needs to accommodate. So talking about getting your rest, there are sleep apps that can help you. Obviously, if you don't want to keep your phone super close to you, but having no television on in your bed, I don't even have a television in my bedroom anymore. Turning off the screen time. Obviously, these are things that, people say all the time. Mom will tell you not to do it. Turn the screens off, shut down. If you want to read a little bit, calm your mind, start to unplug at least an hour before bed. Don't eat at least 2, if not 3 hours before bed. If you need a little bit of something in your tummy, maybe Make that golden milk 2 hours before you go to bed, and you sit down and you read a little bit of a book, and you turn off the TV, turn off that stressor coming right at you. Don't watch a horror movie right before you go to bed. That's a big one. If you take nothing else away from this, take away, don't watch a horror movie right before you go to bed for many, many reasons. But things again to prepare yourself for deep rest is crucial. It is absolutely crucial. So we really need to be able to shut down and turn off so that we can be our best selves the next day. And your heart needs that love. It needs that from you. And a lot of times, I'm guilty of it. Whatever, I'm watching a movie, or I'll be like, oh, one more episode on Netflix, or I'm in an Instagram hole or a Pinterest hole. Unplug. Unplug. That's the best way that I can say in order to help with your rest, and pick up an actual book. Or if you have a Kindle, that'll work too. Invest maybe in some blue light glasses so that if you are refusing to unplug close to bedtime, that you can at least prevent some of that blue light from kind of shifting into your brain and retinas. But it's just these little practices, these little daily mindful everyday practices. And then obviously the big one, the biggest one. It's so typical that it's almost hard to say. Drink your water. Stay hydrated. You must stay hydrated. And I can be guilty of this one as well. Not drinking enough water during the day, or having too much coffee in the morning, that kind of a thing. Getting that kind of like adrenaline. Also, caffeine, spoiler alert, not so great for your heart, because if you have too much and you get jittery, guess what? That's coming from your heart. So, thinking about a little bit less coffee, maybe switching to a mix, half calf, half decaf, something to that effect. But all setting yourself up for success. So one of the main things I think to take away from this, when we're talking about our heart health and we're talking about our health overall, is small steps, incremental steps that will set you up for success over the long term, and investing in yourself, and doing that in the food that you eat, in the supplements that you take, in the content that you consume, anything that you consume that you bring into your body, into your mind, into your soul. Any of those things, they are going to impact you either positively or negatively. The choice is yours as to what you consume. But if you can take nothing else away from this, then consume things that will help you invest in your health and your well-being over the long term. And if you do that, and you start to begin to listen to your heart and to be in your heart space, you are at least a very large step in the right direction. Remember to keep moving. Find whatever you can do to keep moving, even if it's one of those little foot ellipticals that they have, that you can sit on the couch and move your feet. Keep your legs moving. Lay in Shavasana with your legs up the wall. Give your heart that break. Give it a rest. Get your rest. Unplug. These are all of the things that will begin to keep that investment in yourself, and to keep you living for your heart space, for your heart, for yourself, for your body. Because remember, it all starts with the body. We can't begin to, manifest or live the life of our dreams or any of those things if we are in constant survival mode. It just, unfortunately, it has to start with our safety, and it has to start with taking care of ourselves. And one of the best ways we can do that, one of the simplest ways, everybody's got to eat, starts in your kitchen. It starts with making those conscious choices when you go to the grocery store. And it starts in maybe spending just a little bit more money here and there, if and when you can, and investing in some of those high quality items that will be in your kitchen and hopefully inspire you. Again, little things every day, just little bits, little things you can do. Go for a walk, unplug, even if it's 10 minutes earlier, unplug 10 minutes earlier. Make a golden milk, or have a little cup of lemon water, warm lemon water, whatever it is for you that brings you a little bit of joy and peace at the same time. Feeling for your heart space and starting to tap into that sensation that you get when something's good, and with that sensation that you get when something's bad. You'll know, you just have to start paying attention to it. And that's the huge part, quieting enough and knowing enough to start to pay attention. because at the end of the day, your heart stops beating. That's it for you. It's one of the most important things, one of the most important pieces. It's the bridge. It is the center. It's above the solar plexus, but still, it is the bridge. And it's got a finite amount of beats. Always remember, we're here for a good time, not a long time, but hopefully if we take care of our hearts, we'll be here just a little bit longer and we will feel better with the time that we have. And I think that that is so crucial, making sure that you feel good and that you enjoy it. Remember, with all of the foods that I mentioned, and there are more, please, feel free, go into a hole. Apples are great for your heart. There's so much that we can do to support ourselves. This is literally just scraping the surface, but what do you enjoy? Do you like berries? Do you like baby spinach? Maybe you like neither of those things. Maybe you do like apples. Pick what you enjoy, but do try to be mindful with your choices and, pay attention to your body. Make sure that you talk to your doctor about your nutritional needs. Make sure that you understand what your body needs and listen to your body. A lot of people, myself included, we are more abusive to our bodies than we are supportive of them. We treat them, like a vehicle. And while they are that, they are our form of movement in and around this plane of existence. They are still a representation of us. They are us. You are your body, and you deserve all of the love, all of the care, all of the concern, and all of the support. So support yourself first. If you don't do it, can't expect anyone else to. And so I just want to say how much that I appreciate each and every one of you and for sharing your space with me. I'm so grateful. And so please feel free to share this with ones that you love so that you can inspire them to live from their heart space as well. For more goodness, follow me on all the socials at Above the Ground Podcast or visit my website, airsaboveyoga.com. And as always, definitely check out my other episodes and all of my amazing sisters at divasthatcare.com. You can find us on SoundCloud, Spotify, Odyssey, Apple, or anywhere else that you might feel guided. Again, my name is Gia-Raquel Rose, owner of Airs Above Yoga, and you're listening to Above the Ground podcast, where every day is a good one.